All right, we're going to be talking about Jane's Addiction. I got an article up by Billboard. Jane's Addiction's Farrell throws punch at Dave Navarro during Boston concert. So I'll just read a little bit of this article. On Saturday night, they shared an apology on the band's Instagram story and noted that the group's concert in Bridgeport, Connecticut on Sunday was canceled. So they canceled the next day. And basically, a fan, this is always great too with the day of cell phones where fans can capture this shit that you, long time ago, would have just been like an underground thing, like maybe got out the week later.
Yeah, just a quick story and the music articles.
Yeah.
And
Now we get to see like every single blow and every hit. At Boston's Leader Bank Pavilion, broke out midway through their United Band's performance of Ocean Size, when Farrell became angry for unknown reasons and lunged, that's a good word, at Navarro's shoulder. Farrell's 65. Oh my God, these guys. This is like elders fighting. It's like going to a nursing home.
By elders.
Then continued to shout at the guitarist. Well, Navarro's only 57, so who appeared confused, and the singer ultimately threw a punch at Navarro. What the fuck?
It's being abused by elders is what it is.
True, because, Perry's a little bit older. I'll read a little bit more and then we'll just get into chatting. What the fuck, Navarro appeared to shout as crew members restrained Farrell and dragged him backstage. What I like about that comment is he goes, so clearly I did something, but I don't know why. The guitarist...
It's like dating a woman.
You don't know why you date women?
Don't know what you did.
I actually often, with the amount of breakups that I've had, I don't know why I date women. So the guitarist then took off his guitar and walked off stage, ending the concert after 11 songs. Jane's Addiction reunion shows have typically featured 3 or 4 additional performances, and they're probably done now, right? They were on a long hiatus before this. But I think what I want to do today is not completely just laugh at these guys, but also just talk about hardships of being in a band, being with the same group of people. In my mind, it's having a band reunion is kind of not different from having a family reunion either. Like, those often start okay, and then after a couple drinks, they get a little progressively worse. So, I think I sent you this on Twitter. This guy did a video of it. We'll watch in a minute, but the comments were great. Because one of the guys wrote how basically it seemed like Perry was missing all of his cues. So it seemed like if we don't know, but it seemed like some of the frustration was, hey, man, the singer either was a little stoned or a little drunk. I guess he had a bottle of wine on stage. And, well, probably, I like wine. Why not?
I love wine.
Why would I want to take this great bottle and break it up upon multiple glasses? Right? It's so much more convenient to have the whole bottle. But I think what's interesting...
You're going to drink the whole bottle anyway, so might as well make that your cup.
Yeah. So basically, what it sounds like is that Perry was missing cues, and then the band kind of shorted a section on Perry without letting him know, because they're like, hey, let's get through this song. And that's where kind of some of the what the hell are you doing kind of came from.
Right. And then when I read the article too, it mentioned something about Perry had been annoyed at how loud the band was.
Gotcha.
And that he felt like his vocals were being drowned out. And he couldn't really hear himself. And he was experiencing tinnitus after the shows and vocal strain after the shows. And that it wasn't getting resolved. So I think there was perhaps multiple layers of frustration built up.
For sure. Frustration's mounting, right? It's not day one. Yeah. It's not their first show of the tour. And I think quite often we can be in situations like that. And maybe if there are some substances involved as well. And so
does tend to exacerbate, especially if it's alcohol. Like, alcohol is the great exacerbator of aggression. Yeah.
Well, and then I can see the bands... via one of the notes that I read is basically looked like the band had a huddle and saying, hey, you know what? He's missing his cues. He's missing this. Let's shorten some shit up. Let's get to what we're good at, move on, and kind of minimize those mistakes. And then I
gotta say the band was sounding great during that portion without any singing. Like the solo was solid, like they were tight.
Yeah.
Good performance.
Yeah. So who knows, right? You can be a fly. We're not a fly on the wall. We don't know what it was, but I think the interesting thing is we hear lots of stories with rock and roll, and I don't think rock and roll is any different than, if you're a sports team and you're frustrated that player didn't make that pass, and you get into somebody's face. But if I was working at a local Starbucks and somebody screwed up a cup of coffee, I don't get to get into their face and yell at them and push them around.
Well, as we know from from history, their tensions can run especially high in a band setting. It's not your typical workplace scenario. They do get pretty raw with each other, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's professional, but I mean, how many bands consider themselves like just professionals performing? That's like your hired gun. That's your professional guitarist that you hire to play the show for you. Like,
exactly.
He better not speak up or cause a scene. But when you're essentially this group of friends, or one time,
are they even friends anymore? Right?
Yeah. You have different relationships there.
Well, and here's the thing: as tensions are mounting, I'm sure we can just put ourselves in their shoes. I'm sure Perry said something to somebody, and I'm sure Navarro said something, and nobody's actually mediating it though. Nobody's going, hey, you know what? We are playing a little loud. Or the attitude, as I've had with a lot of musicians, is, yeah, it's loud, but fuck you. Like,
right?
Yeah, I'm loud. Figure your shit out. I'm going to worry about mine.
Right.
And then I think as you get to that skill set or in that level of concerts and venues, it's just like, well, fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think there's not a manager at that point saying, hey, hey, everyone, can we sit down and talk these things through?
And I do agree with that. The fact that, I personally feel like shows can and often are often too loud, and it would just be so much more enjoyable if they would tone the beats down a notch. And I really hate it when the vocals are obscured by overly loud guitars and in a live production. So I would be on the side of that if that was the case. I'd personally be on the side of just tone it down a bit, get the vocals out front.
Yeah, but you're right, 100%. But it doesn't give Perry the right to then go. Right, you don't get to do.
There's no excuse.
Yeah. You don't get to do it in the middle of the concert, and I'm all for a little bit of like getting in each other's face to a degree. I'm not very confrontational. I would like to be.
Yeah.
But you just don't handle it there, and you don't then ruin the show for everyone else. I mean, the audience that have paid good money, and you don't ruin then subsequent tickets that have already been purchased.
Yeah. No, that's very, very poorly done there. Very poorly handled, let's say. Because it's so inconsiderate to the audience. I mean, these are regular people, working for their money and choosing voluntarily to spend it on your performance, and then to take that evening out of their lives. Yep. Who knows what arrangements they may have had to make in order to be able to get there that night. It could have been challenging. Maybe they had kids and they needed to get daycare. Or
all of those things, right?
So it's like there's just so much going into those people being there that you have to respect that.
Yeah. And do you feel like at that point it becomes an inflated ego that they're just like, whatever my problem is right now is way more important than, I mean, like, dude, Jane's Addiction's moment in the sun is gone. It's not like they're a big band anymore. And I mean, they had a couple hits. I don't mind them, no ill will, but
They formed in '85.
Oh, wow.
They disbanded originally in '91. So like, that was a good little bit ago.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I learned reading up about them that their disbanding in '91 was the first Lollapalooza event.
Oh, wow.
And it like set that whole thing going.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I just feel like even if they're not an upper echelon band anymore, they might still be carrying like an upper echelon degree of ego. I feel like
it's kind of how that came off, right?
Okay, yeah. Well, and I also think like Dave Navarro's been known for that before in the past. Perry has been known. I'm guessing the reason they didn't get along in the past was stuff like this of, vocals are the most important thing. Guitars are the most important thing. Let's fight.
Yeah. Well, and then there's, of course, the stories as far as big egos go, you got the stories of Axl Rose in the '80s, just not, our Guns N' Roses as a whole, just not showing up for
like hours, right?
Hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
again,
like you consider your fan base your bitches.
For sure.
Not showing much gratitude.
Now it's easy for us to say in our situation, like, oh man, I would never do that. But you do have to wonder, like, oh dude, there's a story where Bono wouldn't go on stage until somebody flew his cowboy hat. Like his cowboy hat was left in like somewhere anyway, so he would not go on stage until the airplane arrived with his cowboy hat. And it's like, is that important? Is that your lucky hat?
Right. Is that how you sing? Is that what gives your vocals their your vocal skill to you?
What if he has a tiny person that lives in the hat that does all the singing though?
It's just like a Ratatouille thing, or a little person up there just like directing him around. Yeah. Higher note.
I'm glad now that I've learned that have watched Ratatouille, because I've always made jokes about the movie, but I've never seen it.
Right, it's a pretty good movie. It's worth a watch.
Yeah, it's Pixar, right? Yeah. I think so.
Is it? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a movie house that made that. What is a situation that you've had with temper flares with either a live performance or a recording? Not that you've ever had a temper, because you're pretty even keel as far as people go.
I've definitely lost it a few times in different situations. So I've lost it with just myself. Like doing takes. Primarily what comes to mind is doing vocal takes and just getting frustrated at not getting the result I want. After doing it over and over and over, just kind of having a little hissy fit about it, and I mean, you've been there for some of it when I'm just kind of like, I've lost it a bit.
Yeah. You have to leave the room, right?
This is stupid. I can't do this, or whatever. And it's like, nah, just take a break, come back to it, let the frustration pass. But I've also had it working with, of course, working with other people. So I was at one point in a band called Long After Midnight, and so I'd come up with a cool guitar riff, to like a synth setup that one of the other members came up with, and like a groove and some kind of like harmony changes, and I'd add a guitar riff on top of that, and then they just like scrap the whole song without like developing it further, and I'd be like, I really like that.
The whole song. It's not he got rid of your part. He got rid of the whole song.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And it's like I sat down and put the effort in, and it's kind of the same way that I found out that I was no longer in that band. Like, they had known for like 4 months that I was no longer in, but I didn't. So I'm still like spending my time working on these riff ideas and like sending stuff, and then all of a sudden like they accidentally put a message in the wrong channel.
Oh really? Wait, that's the best.
They had a channel that was just them now, and like, so they accidentally included me, and it was like about mixing and mastering our last release, our last track, that they weren't including me on. They weren't asking me for any feedback on it. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And that's kind of how I found out that.
Wait, that's very much texting the wrong girl and saying, hey, what time are we meeting? And she's like, I thought you were gone. And you're like, oh, now the funny thing is now they have to tell you. So in your brain, there's some computing that has to go on where you're like, wait, how long till they were going to tell me? When were they going to finally let me know? Also,
this is after I had gone through the effort of while having a pregnant girlfriend, I went through the effort of getting over to Michigan in order to play a show with them. And then I find out that was already, like, they already knew at that point that they were cutting me out of the band. Yeah. So I went through all that effort for this band that was already like had cut me out. I'm like,
which then you
could have told me. I wouldn't have done it. It's
but again, the reason they didn't tell you is because then you wouldn't show up for that show.
Yeah, I definitely would not have.
I might have, but I mean, you would have some good.
I had other more important things on my plate at the time, and I was still considering them one of the important things that I was kind of putting prio.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to like feeling your time and effort wasn't being validated, right? So they were fine with you continuing to put some effort in and just being like, well, we'll eventually tell them. And it goes back to this idea of like people in general suck at this. But like I feel like bands are even worse because usually bands are like these group of musicians, right? And everyone gives these musicians bad names, like, and sometimes we deserve it, right? For sure we do. Where we're not dedicated, or we don't have our shit together, or we don't show up on all these things, and then you have those 4 to 5 people in a group saying, "Well, now let's resolve this conflict." Do you really think that's going to happen? No. Instead, what's going to happen is it's going to blow up on stage like it did for Jane's Addiction. It's going to manifest itself.
I think it's like with any relationship, though. It's those issues that you don't address in the moment, even if they're kind of small. You just kind of you say suck it up or just let it go, but you don't really let it go, like because you haven't addressed it. So it's like this little gradual build up over time of all these small resentments until you're just like, well, F you, man, and
it blows over
someone on stage.
And I do feel like it almost like it's a petri dish, right? Being in a band. So you take those 4 people that don't have maybe good conflict resolution. They don't have a high level of discernment. And I'm not saying I have any of those things. I'm just saying like I understand parts of it. Doesn't mean I can put it into practice. So you take 4 people that are deficient in those areas and expect them to get along together. That's why bands reunions work for like 2 months and then they're done. Quite often.
Yeah.
It's hard. I think it's hard to work with other people. I think you were talking about doing vocal takes and getting frustrated with yourself. I feel like quite often it's easier to try to hold yourself to a higher level. Like say 2 people are hanging out and working on doing vocal tracks together, and we both follow through with a commitment. See, that's funny shit. That's called an inside joke. No, but like also the reason, so Nick and I were both working on some stuff and he had a busy week and I 2 weeks ago had a busy week. So I sucked 2 weeks ago, Nick sucked this week. And that's what it's going to be though. And it's figuring out what works for you, what balance of like beating each other over the head or being an asshole and bringing it up in a video. Those kinds of things. And I would never do that.
Well, my favorite was when you and I were tracking vocals for Higher Ground, and we were in the same physical location, which is ideal, and I just got to yell at you constantly. Yeah. It was such a happy time for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad with video technology we can get there again, and eventually maybe do those live. No, but okay. You and I have worked together well because we have common goals. We are similar enough and competitive enough that it works. Where, again, pointing just back to Jane's Addiction and any band that at that level, I'm guessing the reunion tour is not just about them hanging out again. I'm guessing some of it's about the money. Some of the goal is, hey, you know what? That pool house that I put in 7 years ago needs to get refinished, and I want to make the pool bigger. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, if your ambition is different, your goals are different. It's gonna see itself in a different light, and all of a sudden it's like, why am I working with this asshole? This asshole doesn't give it. I can take you yelling at me because I know you want me to be better, or you're just, right. Or you're just like, well, that motherfucker just learned to sing a goddamn note so we can move on. How many times? But with Jane's Addiction,
the response to it was very positive. It wasn't like I was just being abusive without any good results. It was like.
I liked how you could not completely get that sentence out of your mouth. You're like, I just wasn't. You're like, no, I think part of it. But no, it was getting the result that you wanted and you knew it worked. Because here's the thing. It's much like shocking a dog with a collar. Now, I don't think that's the best thing to do in the world. But if it keeps the dog from going across the road, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah. And there's a certain level of aggression that's appropriate, you know, in certain situations. Not like was done on stage during Perry and Navarro, but there's a certain level that can be productive.
This goes back to me just paralleling with like any regular job. If you were making coffee and all of a sudden I was in your face and yelling at you, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. But if we're working on a song together, which music has a passion to it, it has an emotion to it, and you're trying to push that into somebody, I think it makes sense. You hear stories about this all the time.
And honestly, the comparison I would draw is sitting there doing those vocal takes is much more similar to working out with someone.
Yeah.
you know. And you're just like, you're trying to pump them up, trying to amp them up.
Yeah.
You're like kind of getting in their face, like, come on, one more, you got one more, come on. You know,
Do you feel like writing me love letters while you're here? Luke, your voice is as elegant as you don't think that would do it for me? You haven't tried that as a love language.
I have not. You're right.
Yeah.
That's a very fair point, and my sincerest apologies for just jumping straight to mild abuse and skipping the love letters.
Yep. Maybe there's something in between. All right, so my quick story, and then we'll pull up some other ones. I often overcommit. You know this about me, and said I could help somebody. I'm not even gonna give a time frame. Help somebody in a cover band. And then it became because of my skill set, and that's not a brag. I have a weird skill set, but like all of a sudden I was putting the music together. I was learning the lead guitar parts, which I never said I was going to, and all this shit. And then I boil over because somebody just asked a stupid fucking question. Like a question that I've already, well, no, but like what pissed me off, this goes back to the time thing. Like I was putting in time and effort, and the person asked a question that I already answered. And I was like, are you fucking serious? And I threw my gold top down, which is not the smartest move you could. Yeah. But I used to have anger issues. I've worked through a lot of them. You know, there's probably some that can come up every once in a while. But, I think the proud part for me, as you're throwing down your $1,700 guitar, was I didn't stay angry. That's good for me. Before I'd be like a 3-day bent of like just being a complete asshole. I was able to work through the conflict rather quickly because I did respect and like the guy that I was working with. It just, I overcommitted, and I saw a lot of it as my problem though. It really was missed expectations on both ends.
Right.
But you just hit that point, and this was during a practice, and it was funny to see the other two people in the room go. One I actually was in a band with before, so he kind of know that I could be a hothead. The other doesn't know me at all. Just like, Luke kind of scares me when he's upset like that. And I don't think that's not necessarily a good thing. It goes again to like, I wasn't able to say, hey, these are where I'm not getting my needs. That sounds really dumb, but I'm not getting mine. But it's true. When anger like that boils over, it's a misconception on somebody's end. Somebody's not meeting a requirement.
Well, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about just basic, in any relationship, you need to communicate, as effectively as possible. And it's about the small things every step of the way as they happen before they blow up.
Now, it's two people that are in very healthy long-term relationships. We are people to give this advice. Like, we're doing a fucking service today.
I would say we are at least people who know why the advice is good advice.
Or we've experienced enough broken relationships that we're like, this is what I would not do.
Yes.
Do not do. A couple quick stories that I pulled up because I do feel like, again, we're working with humans and people get frustrated and sometimes frustrated with themselves, which I quite often do too. The amount of times that I've wanted to quit, like even honestly a couple weeks ago where I'm like, man, you're really bad for 41. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
No.
Don't agree that quickly. So a story that I pulled up was Tom Petty working on, I love how I put stutter accents. It was Southern accents, but Southern accents. It was a guitar part that he wasn't getting down, is my understanding, and he was walking up the room, hit the stairwell like this with his fist, and fucking broke bones.
Damn.
Now, he's not...
That's not going to help you play the guitar part.
I was just going to say that. Now, he's not Mike Campbell, but he still was a decent guitarist. I mean, he's still the rhythm guitarist. He still did some leads. Like, you broke fucking bones in your hand because you were that frustrated about a part. And again, it's probably not just that part. It's the mountain that's behind you as you're thinking about these things.
Right. Who knows how many tensions and what kind of pressure have been mounting up, and they're in the studio. That's a stressful place to be too, and all that. And
there was
you just want to get that part down and move on.
And move on. Your frustrations with me sometimes, all the time. Flood, who's a good producer, was working with Depeche Mode, and they did this thing where they, it's not one I've written down, but they rented a house, which you often hear. They rented this great house. The problem was, he said, if you dropped a pin in the far room, you would hear it as a grenade in the other room. So just,
Whoa.
he's like, what I learned very quickly is the only way to have any privacy was to be in the control room. If I'm in the studio, if I'm in the control room, I'm recording, everyone else is going to, just do their thing and go around. But it created such tensions with everybody, which, then it doesn't lead to great recordings. Well, sometimes it does, but oftentimes if everyone's at each other's throat, it's not going to.
One of the most impressive bands to me, as far as longevity and staying together, and all the members are the original members, is Rammstein, actually. And I don't remember which album it was, or between which albums it was, but they talked about just having a dead moment. They couldn't be creative. They couldn't think of new material. And then they actually, I think it was in Switzerland, they rented a house like out in the mountains or something, just somewhere nice. Maybe it was more like, I don't know. Probably wasn't Switzerland, but
location
anyway, somewhere they rented a house, and it was just a really nice setting, and it kind of like broke them out of it, and inspired them. But yeah, they've been since the 90s, I believe. They've been the same members,
which is 30 some years now at this point, right?
What's that?
30 some years at this point, then.
Yeah. And
well, but I don't think it is.
That to me is truly impressive, because you don't see that. You don't see that often. That like, all the original, and they still get along. They still, they still are able to tour and continue making records, and it's just wild.
No, I think how many 50-year anniversaries do we see in marriages anymore, right? That's a very rare thing. So for a band to be together for 30-odd years, that's a rare thing. I think of the Stones, too, which is mostly original members at this point. Obviously, Charlie Watts passed away a couple years ago. And I think they had a different bass player throughout. But that's not bad.
Right.
You would hope then it continues to foster creativity and higher level albums, and sometimes I think it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I think nobody, the Stones aren't necessarily tapped into the cultural zeitgeist. Is that the right word? Yeah, zeitgeist anymore. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily.
Yeah.
But they're still producing good stuff on their end.
Yeah. And that's another, actually, just to jump back to Rammstein, that's another amazing thing about them to me personally, is it's just like a year or two ago they released more music, and it was still relevant.
Yeah.
It was still banging.
That's hard.
Still really solid. So often you see bands, as they age, their sound dramatically changes, like completely changes. And which is fine. It's an evolution of a person, like you change over time. But if you're still called the same band, and you were in the 80s, you were rock, and now you're country, that's a pretty significant shift. But they're still same sound, still banging, still sounding great, and creating relevant material. And I'm just like, wow, and I think they're in their late 50s now, if not hitting their 60s. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a testament to them.